Welcome to Heal the World Show podcast, brought to you by the Healing Institute. The Healing Institute is a worldwide online platform of holistic practitioners, and we are really making a difference with health and healing in the world. I'm Parmelia Parham. I'm the founder of the Healing Institute. And it's really important for me, that's why I called it an institute, to educate people about how to be well and how to stay well. And I've been using alternative ways of being well, holistic ways of being well for over 30 years. So I know that they work. I think we've had this medical model for the last 50 years that really is broken now and not working. Mainly, my opinion is because we only looked at symptoms. We didn't look at what the root cause was. So all of our practitioners that are part of the Healing Institute, they get to the root cause of what's going on, whatever the issue might be, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual, whatever it is that you as a person who's looking for health and healing would like to work on. And so the reason that I created the Healing Institute, because we did have a tragedy in our family a number of years ago. My mom passed away at the age of 61, and it was due to complications because she had been on a medication for over 20 years. And not at all did we ever know or were we ever informed that this medication, being on it for a long period of time, would affect her kidneys. So unfortunately, she passed away on December 15th, right before Christmas. And I was 5 months pregnant with my son, my first child. And I just say it's not just a tragedy that she died young. It's also a tragedy that my children didn't get to grow up and meet their grandmother. And I don't want that happening for other families. So that's why I'm really passionate about educating about how to be well, about all the beautiful, wonderful, holistic modalities that we have in the world, as well as what we have on the Healing Institute platform. And so I do this podcast every Friday, and I invite people to come and talk about their area of expertise. And I am so, so excited today to have two amazing people as my guest co-hosts. Just want to let everybody know this is our 108th episode. So I've been doing this for a little over 2 years. And it's October. So I was trying to think, well, what could our theme be? And I decided it was going to be optimistic October. So I think today's podcast is going to be perfect for optimistic October. So I want to introduce you to Tippy Missick. She is a neurofitness educator. And Drew Deraney is a caregiver. Well, you can see what he says, what he has on his background, caregiver and family health coach. Welcome, both of you. It's so wonderful to
Thank
see you
you.
today
Thank you.
and have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
And we're going to talk about unique brains. And I love that terminology. Tippy came up with that description of people who may have ADHD or be neurodivergent in some way. And I really love the idea of those brains being unique because that puts such a powerful, positive, look about it. We've kind of, I think, sometimes get stuck in these names that we, like ADHD or neurodivergent. And what does that mean? First of all, a lot of people don't even really know. And then it kind of has a negative connotation. So I love the term of because we all have unique brains, regardless of how they work. So Tippy, why don't you start us off? Give us a little snippet about where you're coming from and how you came up with this unique brain description.
Well, thank you, Pamelia. I'm so happy to be here today, especially with my friend Drew, but we have a lot to share. I actually never was diagnosed, but know most definitely that I'm a person with ADHD and was a child with ADHD. When I was probably about 10 years ago, I ran into one of my teachers from the 7th grade. And I said, Mr. Polino, I just have to ask you, do I have ADHD? And he looked at me crazy and he said, Tippy, honestly, you were just excitable. And I said, excitable. I don't know if that's really a good thing or a bad thing, but that was when I owned my ADHD. And I love to refer to it as a uniquely wired brain because that puts a positive spin on it as opposed to carrying a label. I mean, I still have ADHD, I always will, but I prefer to say I'm a uniquely wired child.
I love that. Yes. And Drew, we wanted to hear about you because you do have a uniquely wired brain child.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, my son, who's 23, is on the autism spectrum, and he tells me that he thinks I have ADHD. I haven't been diagnosed it. And I think a lot of us have the attention deficit, especially when the world is overwhelming and the way it is. But he definitely thinks differently from me. And if you're a parent, even if I have three kids, even if you have three kids who are all neurotypical, you still have to parent differently for all three because they are all unique. When you add on the neurodiverse brain that thinks even more different, if that's a term, you have to be able to be willing to be open-minded and to learn how to think differently in order to communicate better and to be on the same, I want to say, energy wavelength with that individual. So I've had to do a lot of adaptation and a lot of really relearning and rethinking about how I think and how I relate information to him and how I receive it from him. So it's been pretty rewarding. Yes, there's frustration, but it's been challenging and rewarding at the same time.
Beautiful. Yes. So I want to just acknowledge we have two of our holistic practitioners with us today. They're in the green room or the back room, as I call it. So Marie is here from South Africa, and Marie Piplovic is here from Portland, Oregon. So Marie has a great question. Would you be able to touch on ways to support children with ADHD in order for them specifically to thrive? So not just, the basics, but how we can relate to children with ADHD so that we can really support them in thriving in this world today.
Absolutely. So a child with ADHD, because their brain is uniquely wired, we shouldn't use regular, ordinary parental strategies because those are made for children who are labeled as, I hate this word, but normal. But children like myself who are very focused, but also very easily distracted and have a hard time sitting in their seat or focusing on just what they're not interested in. So my trick, I like to call it, is I like to introduce music, movement, arts, crafts, anything that will take their mind off of their emotional breakdown or something they're not interested in, and try to rope them in by changing what the atmosphere is at that moment in time. So for example, the other day I was with one of the kids from school and he has ADHD, extremely focused, and he made a mistake on his art drawing. And he just said, Miss Tippy, I ruined it. I ruined it. And he started having a meltdown. And I looked him in the eye and I just said, Ben, look. And then I made this silly face that was absolutely ridiculous. And all he could do was laugh. So just changing the air can make a big difference. But when you respond in kind, then it just escalates.
Yeah. So just changing the energy, you just changed the energy around him. He was
Yes.
feeling badly because he felt he'd made a mistake. And then you were goofy.
Yep.
So he couldn't help but just start to laugh and then lighten up that whole situation, right?
Exactly.
Do you have some tips, Drew, that you work with your son?
Well, my son has been diagnosed with both what they call the Asperger's or level one Asperger's and also ADHD. One of the things I learned, and I learned it from him and by accident, because I tend to, if you're, and I call it neurotypical as opposed to normal, but if you're neurotypical, I tend to would talk about one topic, and then when I think we're done, the next topic comes, right? So rapid fire. And I remember speaking with my son, and he even said he's having a challenging morning. Overwhelmed is his favorite word, and we started on one topic that he introduced, and then somehow I went from that topic after I thought we were done to another topic, and then to another topic that I thought were related to each other. So I was following it very well. He completely melted down, and when he slammed the door and left, he came back. I'm here thinking I'm blindsided. I'm like, what the heck happened? He came back after he calmed down and was able to decompress. And he said, Dad, I can follow one topic at a decent pace, but when you start going from one topic to another topic to another topic, I get so overwhelmed and I can't think straight, and I can't do it, and I have to walk away.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. So it's taken me quite a long time to break the habit of, and actually in a way, it's probably good I break that habit completely, because I don't give myself a chance to ask the person if we're done with if that topic yet,
Or do they have any questions about that
or if they have any
topic?
questions, or yeah, I was glad to learn. It was interesting to learn that way. And now it does take a real conscious effort for me to A, slow down, and B, stick to one topic and then confirm that we're done with it by asking an open-ended question.
Yeah, perfect. Elmarie got a great question. Do you have specific tips for parents who have just found out that their child has Asperger's?
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, obviously, our son had autism when he was born, and we didn't know it. He tended to do some things that were different from your neurotypical, but I didn't think anything of it because I didn't know much about autism back in 2002. My son's 23 now. So in 2002, I remember when he started to move, he didn't crawl. We call it scooched on his butt. It was like butt heel, it was interesting. He never crawled. That's how he got around. And then one of the things he would do is run from corner to corner in the room. And I just thought he had a lot of energy. And then he would also do a lot of touching his earlobe or my earlobe or his mother's earlobe, and a lot of tactile stuff. And again, I didn't think anything of it. And then in preschool, I remember the teacher asking him to go sharpen pencils. They did know he loved to help the teacher. So the pencil sharpener was against the wall, across the wall. So he took the pencils and he just went straight ahead towards the pencil sharpener to go do what he did. He just happened to plow through 3 or 4 other students because he went in the straight line. He was asked to go sharpen pencils and so I would get a call, and I didn't know why he did it. And they would ask, why did you do that? And he'd answer truthfully, I don't know. And he didn't understand about saying sorry if he didn't do it on purpose.
Right.
So that's setting the groundwork. He hadn't been diagnosed, and I was very reluctant to have him I said to my wife at the time, she was a nurse, but she also tended to catastrophize things, like make it the worst. And I was like, he's just a boy being a boy. He's running around. What's the big deal? So he does things different. So what? I bucked the status quo. So that was like the thing between my wife and me at the time. We finally had him diagnosed, and relatively late compared to what people do now. He was 14 when he was diagnosed, 13 or 14. And when the diagnosis came, I hate labels. So I was just like, all right, so what does that mean? It doesn't change who he is or how I feel about him. Like, what does it mean? So we started to research and look it up, and I'm like, all right, so he thinks differently. Okay. So for me, the label didn't affect how I felt about him, thought about him, but I wanted to learn what this Asperger's thing was. So then I learned about level 1, level 2, level 3, and now the spectrum. So if I'm answering your question, I'm not sure if I'm answering it well, but I didn't think any differently. Some people get paralyzed when they hear a label and they freak out and say, oh my God, what now? like anything changed in the last 30 seconds. Nothing changed except somebody gave a term to what your kid has. But sometimes we do want to know because then
Well,
we,
and I think exactly what you're saying, Drew, is okay. So if you do have your child diagnosed and you get a label, whether it's ADHD or Asperger's or you're on your spectrum, whatever, um, the best thing to do, I think, is as sort of step back and just
Mhm.
not take it as a label that is now going to define your child. Your child is still your child. I love the
Mm.
fact that you still saw your son as your son.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
just because there was a label now attached to him, that didn't make him any different, or
Right.
you didn't love him any less.
Right.
So doing our research around our children and whatever challenges they might have, I think is really very, very important knowing that. My eldest daughter has been diagnosed with ADHD, and she wasn't diagnosed till she was in her teens. But the way she was as a personality, she again had a lot of energy. She we're sort of a household of very kind of strategic people. And I remember one of my very dear friends said to me one day, because we had studied Myers-Briggs, and she said, "Oh, for goodness sakes, Parmelia, give her a break. She's a pea living in a house full of jays." And that was the perfect thing for me because I was like, why is this, why am I always trying to struggle with this child? And it was only me doing the struggling. She was a
Mm.
very happy-go-lucky person, very
Mm.
happy-go-lucky child. There was a few incidents on the playground when she got to school, but again, she wasn't taking any guff from anybody, and she was just standing up for herself. So, we'd go and have the meeting with the principal and the teacher, and then we'd leave and go, yes. If this one particular little boy was always in the playground, not in the classroom, but he, for whatever reason, he would always go after her in the playground, and of course that was never seen. It was only seen when she was retaliating. So you still look at your children as your children, and then just embrace them for who they are, and then find out, as much as you possibly can. Tippy, when you finally realized that you had ADHD, did you start doing research then? Did you start figuring out why things were, or why you saw things in a different light?
Well, it made me actually reflect back to my childhood. So I came from a family of 8 kids, all born within a year of each other. So it was very chaotic anyway. But I remember always being the one sent to the room for
Your
or
bedroom,
so much.
sent to your bedroom.
Yeah, sent to my bedroom or wherever, just to get me out because, I was labeled a rebel, a troublemaker. And that thinking back to all of that made me realize that it was time that I better understood
Mhm.
the wired brain with ADHD. And so I started doing more research. But then it also brought me back to when I became a fitness professional. I mean, I struggled in college, but when I found fitness, it was like I had found heaven, literally. And 50 years later, I'm still doing it and I love it. So when being a uniquely wired child is definitely a positive and it's a
Yeah.
gift. And we all need to realize that, sure, at times we won't be doing exactly what people want us to do, but those troublemakers will someday end up to be like me, powerful and influential.
Yeah. And helping society and helping other parents learn how to navigate. I mean, as there's no book that we get, or workbook that you get, or dictionary on how to be a parent, regardless of what your children are like. And so it's very, very important for us to have people like yourself who can help us as parents. I know, I remember when my son was very, very clingy. He's my first child. So he was very, very clingy, very sensitive, still a very sensitive young man. But was taking him to the daycare so I could go to work, and he would be, I need 3 hugs, I need 4 kisses, I need mommy, don't leave. And I was like beside myself thinking, oh my gosh, I'm abandoning this child. And then I'd get to work and then I'd call. And they'd like, oh no, he's totally calmed down. Like he's fine. So I remember having a little conversation with one of the teachers, and she said, I would recommend that you tell him he's going to have 2 hugs, 3 kisses, and 1 wave goodbye, and then just leave. And when I started to incorporate that, it worked perfect. That's all he needed, because I knew he was fine after I'd left, because I always called to make sure he was okay. So, we have to be taught as parents sometimes how to deal with our children's, because we often don't know that we're trying to be the best parents that we possibly can be, and we don't always know that those little tips are so wonderful. And we're just, any other comments that either of you would like to talk about, or any other advice you'd like to give us and give
I
our
would
audience
love,
who's listening?
yeah, I would love to pick up on what you had just said about your son. So the one thing that really parents need to understand is children with uniquely wired brains don't do well with transition.
Mm.
So if you can create a routine, just as you did,
Mm.
they know that when that routine is enacted, then their transition is starting, and they know what to do. But if you just throw them out of the car and send them off to school, it's like a transition that they're not ready for.
Right.
And that's when usual meltdowns start. So building a routine and being able to
Beautiful.
implement that routine is one of the biggest and best things you can do with a child with
Oh, I
uniquely.
love that. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's exactly what was happening. I wasn't showing him the exact routine. I was kind of trying to follow what he what I felt he needed, or obviously from what
Right.
his behavior was, I was thinking what he needed. And
Yes, and
as soon as I
it
gave him that
always,
routine, then things
yeah,
fell into place.
because if you don't have a routine, it's worse on you as the parent, because you become overwhelmed and wondering what you did wrong. So it's
Absolutely.
win-win for both the parent and the child. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
You mentioned something. You mentioned about bullying, or the word bully, or I think you mentioned it about that boy.
Well, that's what he was doing. I didn't actually say the word, but that's
Uh,
exactly what
he
he was doing.
well. It triggered a thought in my head, because my son was often misunderstood before he was diagnosed as being a bully or a troublemaker, and that's what it took for me to agree to have him tested, because I knew I used to call him the finisher, not the starter. Like his brother would start something with him, and my oldest son would finish it. My son wasn't a bully. I knew he wasn't. I knew he didn't start stuff. He was self-advocating. And I think when you have a misconception and think someone's bullying, when in reality, like you said, your daughter would get caught, retaliating, really taking care of herself, self-advocating. My son would get caught finishing, which was really self-advocating, and so to be mislabeled as now a bully, and that ends up being your reputation, not good. So that was what I call the circumstance where I had to pay attention and think differently, where now let's get this checked out, because then we could redirect him and stuff like that, and tell people he's not doing this on purpose. Let's help him instead of make him punish him.
Exactly.
So.
And I think that's kind of our educational system and our parental way that we've been taught to be parents, is when a child is not following what you think they should follow, or society thinks they should follow, then they need to be punished, or they need to have something, taken away from them. And that so does not work for uniquely wired brain children. Absolutely not. Doesn't work for me either. Although I could be easily uniquely wired brain. I often have I used to say I have OCD. Things need to be in a certain order, and if they're not, I'll be straightening things out. So, so who knows? That could be part of my uniquely wired brain. Well, this has just been a delightful conversation with both of you. And I'm so grateful for you for the time that you were able to spend. You know, the holistic ways of being well and staying well, as I mentioned earlier, are so important. And we do have our community of holistic practitioners who really will look at whatever your situation is uniquely and then develop and customize a treatment or whatever needs to happen for you as a unique. We're not one size fits all at all. And we really take into consideration what is going on with you and what your particular concern is, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual. And then we design accordingly for what it is that you need. Our motto is service with love. We really do want to spread love in the world, and we really want to do it from a holistic health and healing point of view. And we have a big ask. You know, we're just getting started. We're still growing as a community. We are definitely a community. That's why I have an international wellness community. The holistic practitioners that are presently on the platform, we really feel we are a community. We get to know each other, so that when people are coming and ask, they might maybe choose Marie, for example, because she helps with burnout and has wonderful breathing techniques. But then she could also say, well, you know, in the conversation with the person, and identify perhaps they need to be referred to Elmarie, because Elmarie looks after boundaries and helps people put healthy boundaries into place, as well as many other things. So as a community, when getting to know each other as practitioners, then we can really help our clients from all different ways. So we have our big ask. We want you to, any of you who are listening to this podcast or watching it, please let your community know, let your family know, let your coworkers know, let everybody know that we are here for them, and hop onto our website and connect with the practitioners. We all have a 30-minute complimentary consultation, so you can easily get to know us to see if we're a good fit, because that's also very, very important. So again, I want to thank Drew and Tippy for being on the podcast today and imparting this information. I think it's so very important for us to look at, especially our children, especially children in schools and each other. Even you can look at and say, hey, I wonder why that person did that. Now, why did Drew go from that subject to that subject to that subject? Oh, okay. You know, we need to sometimes, I mean, and I do the same thing. I start one thing, and then I'll think of another part that I think fits, only to be told, hey, what are you talking about? So yeah, we need to be just very, I believe anyway, very, very kind and generous to each other and open. So again, thank you, Drew. Thank you, Tippy. Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you
Thank you.
so much.